Great. So welcome everyone. My name is Sandra Murray. I'm the program coordinator for the Center for Teaching and Learning. I would like to welcome you to the session today on Getting to Know onQ with Karla Coleman, who is in the Center for Teaching and Learning. I'd like to start by acknowledging the fact that I am in Kingston. I'm actually in the office today at Queen's on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people. And I just thought it would be a good idea to ground us in the fact that I have had an increased understanding of what it means to be on this land. And I guess an appreciation too of the longer history that has taken place here before I was born and before Queen's was established on this land. And I'm grateful that I'm learning more and more from my Indigenous colleagues. It's a beautiful day outside, and I often try to get out during my lunch hour to get away from technology and just ground myself in either nature, walking and looking at the trees, or being in my kayak on the water. I find that very de-stressing. So, and I think we need as much de-stressing as we can these days. So thank you so much, Karla. I'm going to let you take over.
Thank you, Sandra. So I am Karla Coleman. I'm the Educational Technology Advisor with the Center for Teaching and Learning. Just want to thank everybody for joining us today. So I have been with the CTL for a year now. It's crazy to believe that I started this role as sort of the pandemic was just starting off, and here we are. It feels like forever later, still in the same place. But today we're going to talk about onQ and the tools it has to offer and how you can use them in a course. We'll look at some perspectives, obviously, from a TA position and what our best practice or recommendations are from that role and using the program. So as Sandra mentioned, the session is recorded, so I will share my screen, but I'll turn off my video and we'll maybe talk about tools individually along the way. So because there's a large number of us, if we want to take a pause after each tool, and if you want to ask questions then feel free, but as well as put your questions in the chat and we will do our best to answer those along the way as well. So what I'd like to sort of first look at is, maybe I will hide. The tools. So first, when we talk about onQ, it is, the platform is Brightspace or D2L, if you have heard of that or used it elsewhere before. So when we think about creating a course in onQ, the instructor technically has to do that first. So we can use onQ, but the course likely isn't created for us. So we would have to start there and create the course first. So that's done through what's called the course creation tool. And the course creation tool is accessed. Sorry, these I find quite getting in my way. So the course creation tool is accessed from the onQ homepage. So when you go to access onQ, you would do it from either, you could go to queensu.ca and click search and sign in and access onQ. And you'd be prompted to enter your email address and your password. So this is automatically logged me in. So from here, we would come to the landing page of onQ. On the right-hand menu under for staff and faculty widget, you could click the link to log into the course creation tool. So I already logged in earlier because of it takes a long time for it to load for me. So when we want to create a course, we want to choose between two options. Technically, the first option is usually the most common one. So it's linked to what it says here to PeopleSoft student enrollments. And that just means that this course exists in Solus and students register for this course. And that's how your class list gets populated. Option 2, you could create just a generic course. Maybe you want to run a course through a department, have a small group of students, not linked to a specific course in PeopleSoft. You could do that using option number 2. Now, maybe based on a TA role, you won't likely maybe be creating courses, but just we thought we'd talk about it today just to give you an idea if you needed to help an instructor, how this process goes. So you would enter your course code. So maybe we'll just associate 100. Maybe it's 22. Find a course. So we select it from the list. This list will be built based on instructor and what they have access to. So the instructor is outlined here. So we enable course creation. What we include here is a list of students that are enrolled into each one of these sections. So if I'm just wanting to have the class list based on section A, we would include it here. If I want to include all sections, I would include them in the list. So that just means the class list will be populated based on these sections from PeopleSoft. I'll scroll down, I'll click next. So we have a choice to choose to create a course from scratch or a template, or to copy from an existing course. We have a couple templates to choose from. So if you're wanting to create your course from scratch, you can select a template. So this means it'll have set up modules. This one for the fall term with weekly schedule. So it has modules created per dates for the 12 weeks of the term. Maybe you taught this course a previous date and time, a previous term. You could choose to copy this course. So I want to create a new course for a new term, but I want to use the content from the course I taught in the previous term. You could choose to copy an existing course. Next. So we know that Satchel is the primary instructor for this course. You could add additional users in this field here. So if I wanted to search for a name, find the list, and choose the role. So maybe I'm just going to be an instructor. So we have the name of the course, which is pulled from PeopleSoft, the semester it's going to be offered in, and then we choose a program. So choose a program from the list. This one will be, I think, sociology. We'll leave the optional settings disabled as they appear. It has test students. So the test student is a good option to have in your course, as it gives you the ability to use that student and impersonate that account to view your course as a student role would be seen. We'll click next. Default tools that are offered in onQ. The default ones, these are the ones that are enabled. If you want to add more tools, you can choose, maybe we'll add the calendar. So you just click the dot and it enables. We'll click next. These are additional resources that are offered within onQ that you can add to your course. So maybe you're going to use Turnitin, or Course Reserves is the new one for the library reserves, Perusall, Feedback Fruits, and MS Teams. So if you enable any of these features, then you can do so here for the course. If for some reason you thought to yourself after the fact, oh, maybe I want to use one of these tools, but I didn't enable it during course creation, that's okay. It's not written in stone. We could come back at a later date after the course is created and enable these tools as well. So this gives us a summary of this. There are the options I used to set up my course, just giving me a quick overview. I click yes to the copyright statement, and then I create my course. So I won't create the course at this time, but what happens is the instructor would receive an email with a link to the course that course has been created. So once it's created, you can come back to onQ and you log in, and brings you to the homepage of onQ. Then your course would appear based on a specific My Courses widget. So when the course we created, it'll have the term, and this one was the fall, winter 21-22 filter. So I see a lot of filters because I have access to a lot of courses. And I filter on all just because I want to see all courses, but students and as well as anybody access an onQ, you can choose what filter you want to fall on. And I'll decide what courses you're going to see based on the term. So we'll click the sandbox course that I created just to give us an opportunity to go through and look at the tools and see what it has to offer. So the first thing when your course is created, your course is what we call inactive. So that means it's giving you the ability to set up your course and add content and configure it prior to students being able to see the course. So we sort of recommend that it remains inactive until the course is ready and you have it configured. And once it is ready, then come back to activate it. So to do so, you come to the course admin in the nav bar and come to course offering information. And there's a box for courses active. So you check the box. Now, if you thought to yourself, I know when I want my course to be active, and I don't want to have to worry about coming back to make sure I have the courses active, you can check the box and then add a start date. So that means that the course is active as of that start date and time. You can also add an end date, and that means that as of that date and time, the course would be set to inactive and students would no longer be able to access it. Let's see. And we'll go back to the course homepage. So one thing to note that when a course is first created, students are not automatically populated in the class list. So onQ talks to PeopleSoft or Solus twice a day. It happens at 3:30 in the morning and 3:30 in the afternoon. So it happens that depending on when you created your course, when the class list will be populated. But just as an FYI, sometimes instructors don't realize that, oh, maybe I did something wrong. I don't see the class list, but just keep in mind that if you create your course in between those two sync times, then we have to wait for a sync to happen and then the class list will be populated. So when I created this course, I used the default template. So as I mentioned that it would have specific modules that were already pre-set up for me so that I can work with. So when based on the template, it's also added a default homepage for me. So you can see that the announcements tool is here, as well as a teaching team widget and the calendar. So if we want to make changes to any of widgets that we see here, we can do so by clicking on the drop-down arrow and we edit this widget. So this brings me to the properties tab, but it's actually the content tab that I want to click on where I'm able to enter the content and make changes. So I would just enter my information. And I can click save and close. Go back to the homepage. We can see that my information has been updated. So again, you can click on to make changes to different widgets based on the drop-down arrow, but some tools are slightly different in where you can just actually click to create an announcement. So the first tool we're going to look at is the content tool. So you would use the content tool really to post and organize course content. So the information about course expectations or your syllabus, lecture notes, important dates, they're displayed to the users clearly. So we like to look at this tool and think of it as a one-stop. So students can come here for an overview of what's happening in the course. So we kind of like to build really best practice or recommendations to add maybe required resources or activities and assessments into each module so that students know, okay, so week one, this is what is required. I have to complete maybe these readings or specific activities. So again, it's really, we like to see it as a one spot that students could come to see an overview. So because I used the default template, as I mentioned, these modules were automatically created for me. So that doesn't mean maybe you weren't great. Maybe I'm not having an activity or assessment based on this week. These modules can be deleted. They were just default just for maybe like testing purposes. So if you want to delete a module, you click on the module, click on the drop down, and you can delete. So again, they're not written in stone. It was just there for a template purpose to give people an outline to work from. So there are different features that, as we talked about, that we can add to each module. So maybe I have a required resource that I want you to view for this specific week. You could click on the upload create button, and maybe we have a file. So maybe there's a file or a chapter of, I'm sorry, that I want you to look at. Upload files. We click on my computer, we click upload, we select the file we wish to add and click add. So now this has created a link to this specific file. If I click on it, it will take me to the file. So we can also add links to videos as well. So we upload, create, maybe we create a link. So if I have, just get a link to a video, enter. We'll open it as an external resource. So it's going to take me outside of onQ to view that video. And we click create. We'll come back to our module. And we can click on the link. It'll take us to that video. See. Again, this thing, keep adding it again. Go back. So maybe these specific links haven't landed where I would like them to land. If you click on, hover over the dots here, you can drag and drop and move their locations around as well. So given the fact that we went into remote learning last year, many people were uploading videos to their courses. So this is something that you can also upload to the content tool. We recommend not uploading directly to onQ with the video because your size limit, I believe, has been updated to 2 gigabytes in size. So the preferred best practice, if you're going to add a video to your course, is to upload it to maybe Ensemble, the Queen's streaming service. So you add your video to the Queen's streaming service, and that's where it's hosted. And then you provide a link to it, to your course. So it just provides a better viewing experience from the student point of view. So you could upload and create, and you could create a file.
Karla,
So
I see that
maybe
there's a question.
Oh, sure.
Can the file be in your computer or should be in one of those onQ resource folders?
So if you're going to upload a video, like I said, we recommend that you don't just have it on your computer. So if you have it on your computer, but then we're going to recommend that you upload it to a streaming service and then add it to onQ. So then it will just provide a link to that file. It's just a better viewing experience rather than, as I said, trying to upload the video to the course because it'll have a maximum size, which I believe now is 2 gigabytes. It used to be 1. So it really isn't a large file that it can upload to. And it can't preview the file that way either if you're trying to upload from your computer. So really best practice, if you can put it maybe in Stream or the Ensemble service, is the best viewing experience for the students.
Thanks, Karla.
So here we would say maybe chapter 1, we're going to create a file. And from here, I choose the streaming service. I can log in. Means I can choose a video, save, and I insert, save and close. Here it's added the link to my video. When I click on it, well, so then it can preview the video within the module as well. So again, just best practice that we like to recommend is to upload to a streaming service, not to upload directly to the course itself. So maybe we talked about deleting modules. You can create additional modules. So at the bottom, maybe this is final exam, and the link, you can add an additional module. Again, you can just choose delete if you did not want to add that module in the end. So when we think about modules, we can see that we can add dates and restrictions and a description. So again, if maybe I'm working on this module and I don't want it to be visible just yet, we can choose to hide the visibility. So when it has the I with the cross through it, that means that it's hidden. So it means I can be working on this module without students being able to see what I'm up to. So we can also add dates and restrictions, and this means that maybe this module isn't going to be visible until this date and time. You could add a due date and an end date. So there really are 3 dates that onQ, refers to: the start, due, and the end. So the start date, explanatory, as of this date and time, this is available, it starts. The due date, again, when I want you to complete this task by, and an end date. And the end date means that it's no longer visible, like it removes it from the view. So typically we don't always recommend using an end date because it just sort of can instill maybe a bit of panic. I saw this and now I don't see it. Where'd it go? Is something wrong? So typically we like to recommend just using a start and a due date. Release conditions can be used, and this basically means that maybe I want to have a group in the course and I only want certain students in that group to be able to view this specific module, and then you could create a release condition based on that. So that means I would have to be enrolled in that group in order to see this module. So again, the content tools where we like to kind of build our course around, we like to view it as a one-stop spot for students to come to see what's happening in the course. We've had feedback from students that they like it designed this way. So we like to recommend to instructors and TAs that if you're going to set up a course, to use the content tool. So the next tool we'll look at under communications is the class list. So as I mentioned earlier, that when you create your class, the class list is not populated immediately. It happens to sync with PeopleSoft twice a day. So just to keep that in mind again. The class list is populated based on the enrollment codes that were added to the course when we created it using CCT+. So you can add additional users to the course through the class list. You would click on add participants and add existing users. You would again search for a name that you're looking to add. Find the account you want to add and select a role. So there are lots of roles to be chosen from, as you can see. And you select enroll selected users and then click done. So another quick thing to note, that typically your role that you will have in onQ will not give you the ability to add additional student accounts. The role that you will have will give you the ability to search only for employee net IDs. If you want to add additional students to the course, then that request has to usually be submitted to IT services, as only certain roles within onQ will give you the ability to search for student accounts. And that goes for instructors as well. So typically when instructors are doing our TAs, they're adding additional users are usually with the TA or a co-instructor role. And then those accounts are usually people that are being employed by the university, so they will have an employee net ID outside of their student employee net ID. The other thing usually the class list is used for is to email. So you can use email class list. You can click compose email. It automatically adds everybody to the BCC field. So only you see what the email that you receive. You don't see that everybody else gets it. You can add yourself to the list if you want to receive this email. The one thing to note is that onQ doesn't have its own email server. It is using Office 365. So the email will come from your Queen's email address. And by default, it's not going to send you a copy. So if you would like to see the copy of the email, you can enter your email address in the field. There's also another option under settings where you can go to the email tab and you can choose to send in a copy of each outgoing message to your Queen's email address. So then you don't have to add yourself to the field. So next under communications, discussions. So the discussion tool really provides an area for collaboration and communication. So it allows students to post, read, and reply to messages on different topics, such as maybe you're going to share thoughts about course materials, or you're going to ask questions, you're going to share files with your work, with your peers or colleagues. So why, like a use case, why would you use discussions? Really, maybe introductions. Maybe you want the students to introduce themselves. Maybe they have to pose a question for debate. They can discuss answers to an assignment. Those are good uses for discussions. So if we go, there are two different sort of topics when we think about discussions. So you create a new, and then there's a new forum. So the forum is the parent. It's what we like to think it's going to offer you the information and the direction I want you to follow for this information we're going to talk about. So again, maybe this is about introductions. You can enter any information that you want them to follow. The additional options are there if you want to have an anonymous post or you want to moderate the posts before they're displayed, whether they are have to start a thread before they can read and reply other threads in each topic. As I said, the forum is the parent, but the forum will only be seen if it has a topic associated with it. So if I save and add a topic, the topic really is like the child. It's the one where the activity is actually happening. So the topic is where the students will start a thread and they will read and they will reply. So you have to have a topic associated with the forum or the forum will not be visible. There are two types of topics. So you could have an open topic, and that means everybody in the class can access it, or you could have a group or section. So I could have this topic only visible to specific groups of people, right? If I have maybe, I want to section off my students into smaller like groups, then I could set it as a group topic. And that means that I would only see responses of those students that I'm in a group with. So we'll just leave it open and just usually you can make it the same title. Any descriptions you wish to add. Again, you have your additional options you can apply. We look at restrictions. So what we like to think about with discussions is instead of using availability, so the availability really means that it is visible for these dates and times. If I were to start a start date, it is visible from this start date and then no longer visible as of this end date. But we like to use the locking options, best practice for discussions. So this means that the topic would be unlocked, and that means that students can reply and respond and start threads during this period of time. So as of this start date, I can see the link to click on to reply to or start a thread. And then when I lock at the end date, that means as of this point in time, I will no longer be able to make changes. So the content is still visible for the students to come back and see what's happening and review and read messages, but they won't be able to make further changes. And again, that's best practice. We don't like to use availability. We like to use the locking options. If you were going to assess this topic, you could add a grade item and enter a score. So you could choose to create a new grading item if you didn't have one, or select one from the list and click Save and Close. So the forum appears in black lettering, and you can see that the topic always appears in a link that's in blue. So as of Wednesday, September 1st, there will be, this specific topic will be able to accept threads and posts and replies. So I talked a little bit about in discussions about groups. So the next thing we'll talk about are groups. So groups are used for specific projects or activities. So they really are a means of organizing learners into smaller units for collaborative activities. So they can be used to interact with discussions, as we just talked about, and the assignment tool. So I have a couple groups that are already created, but maybe I want to add a new category. Maybe this will just be discussions. And any description if you want them to follow such details. An enrollment type. So the enrollment type, as you can see, there are a number of them. Sometimes they can be confusing, but I like to think about, and it has the hashtag, so the number. So I want to create groups of what number? Do I want to create groups of 2? I would do that one. If I want to create a number of groups, so maybe I want to have 5 groups in the course, right? So it's going to create 5 groups, and then it will divvy the students up accordingly to evenly follow that number of groups. I could do self-enrollment, or I could do auto-enrollment. So auto-enrollment means that the system's going to automatically enroll those students into the groups. Self-enrollment means the student would have to obviously enroll into the group of their choice. You could have single user member specific groups. So that just means that it's really a private group for that one student. So sometimes that's used as a communication between instructor or TA and a specific student. So nobody else can see it but that one user in that group. It will just take number of groups. You could add restrictions if you had specific enrollments, maybe a large course. I want to create groups based on this enrollment section. I could choose that here. We don't need to add a group prefix. We can choose to auto-enroll new users, and it'll randomize the users into the groups. If I already knew that I wanted to use these groups for a specific discussion or assignment, I could choose to select that option here. And during the group creation process, it would create my discussion and or assignment and then link them together. We'll just click save. You can see it has created 2 groups for me, and I can check to see which members were automatically enrolled. It automatically will give you like the group 1, group 2 naming. You can choose to come in here and change that name to whatever you wish. It's entirely up to you, but it is able to change after. That just automatically chooses that for you when the system creates them. Communications and then announcements. So this tool enables you to create announcement items that help you communicate course updates, changes, new information to questions that maybe people have, and it's used really to be like quick and effective. So when you add an announcement, it adds the announcement to the announcement widget, which we looked at, which is on the homepage. However, this isn't automatically communicated to students. So I can send an announcement or create an announcement, but the student would technically have to come to the course to see that announcement. However, maybe you have already used Brightspace as a student and know that there are options to register for notifications. So if I click on my name in the upper right-hand corner, I can choose notifications, and I can choose to receive notifications based on specific tools. So I can choose to receive a notification via email or SMS when an announcement is updated or a new announcement is available. But just sort of a reminder that even though the announcement is put in the course, that the students will only see it if they've registered to receive a communication outside of the course, or they come to the course to see what's happening. So if I click on new announcement, so I'll have the choice to either save as draft or publish. So save as draft means I'm still working, and publish means it's visible. I could set a start date. So I want it to be visible at this date and time. And I could set an end date if I want it to be removed after a specific time. I could add an attachment or add release conditions. So maybe you had a file you want to upload, you could do that here, or an audio. So when I click publish, it'll appear on as of this date and time on the course homepage under the announcements tool. So the calendar is the last one under communications. So the calendar tool isn't automatically enabled by default when you create your course. You have to turn it on either through course creation tool or through course admin. And then tools. So any tool that maybe you think you would like to enable that was not already on can be done through the tools. So I did turn this one on already. So you can see it has a checkbox, it's enabled. Anything with the circle means it's disabled. So the calendar tool, if you're using assessments in the course, anything that has a due date will be automatically created in the calendar. So there'll be a task or an event created in the calendar for any assessment that has a due date. So the default template has the calendar on the homepage. So you can see that I have an assignment coming up and it's due on September the 3rd. So it's just good to set those due dates as it adds them to the calendar. Again, for students, it's kind of like a best practice thing we like to recommend. So if we look at assessments, the first one is assignments. So the assignment tool allows students to upload and submit assignments directly to onQ. So eliminating the need to either email or hand in on paper submissions. So instructors can use the assignment tool to see when submissions were uploaded, as it gives you a date and a timestamp when that was. So when it has a due date, it would tell you whether that was late and how late that assessment was. And then a penalty can be applied if that was needed. So you can view submissions, you can evaluate, allowing you to return submissions with grades and feedback. So you can assign rubrics as well. You can mark using a rubric through an assignment tool. So for assignments that included file submissions, instructors can download those submissions as well to their computers for review offline. And assignments you can do either individual or group assignments. So maybe we'll just look at what it looks like to create one. So find my mouse, new assignment, give it a title. 2. I can choose what I wish to grade this assignment out of. If I had a grade item, I could click here and I could choose from grades, or it's going to create one for me. Say okay. And I'm going to set a due date. It's due on the 10th. Enter any details or instructions I wish you to follow. You could add additional information. Maybe you have an audio recording you wish to add, or any other files from OneDrive or Google, or a link. You could do so here. On the right-hand side, we look at availability dates and conditions. So we have set a due date. So maybe you don't want this assignment available until a specific start date. You can set one here and you can add an end date. But again, like I said, we don't typically like to recommend end dates because the end date means it removes it from view. So then that just sort of, I think, instills a bit of panic in students. So typically we like to recommend you set a start date if you want one, and add a due date. So that just means that the due date means they can still hand in the assignment, but it would give you the timestamp that it was late. The end date removes it from their view, and then they maybe makes the student contact the TA or the instructor to say, hey, what happened? I don't see this anymore. I want to upload my assignment, but I can't. So if they has a due date, they still can. So they don't, but this means that they're not contacting the TA or the instructor for further information. You could add release conditions. If there was something, maybe you needed to complete a specific module reading before you see this assignment, you could be added here. If a student had an accommodation and needed special access, so outside the regular start and due dates, that could be added through managing special access. Submission and completion. So there are two types, as I said, there can be an individual or a group assignment. And there are 4 submission types: file, text, on paper, and observed in person. The most common is a file submission, and that just means just that I can upload a file to this Dropbox. The text submission gives me a text box that I can enter text into. Maybe it's a link to a file I want you to view. And the last 2, they really are placeholders. So it just shows up under the assignments tool, so that students know that something is there and could be happened. So if I have maybe a presentation, so I could create the observed in person submission type, and that allows the instructor or TA to offer feedback for that specific assessment, but nothing was physically needed to be handed in. But typically most people use file submission. Can choose unlimited or 1 file. We typically recommend unlimited. If you choose 1 file and the student thinks, oh no, I uploaded the wrong file, I can't upload any further, that means they have to contact the instructor or the TA to correct it. So if you just choose unlimited, then they can upload obviously as many times as they want without contacting anybody. And they can choose then to whether you want to keep all submissions or only 1 or most recent. If you add an email address, it will send you an email address telling you that a submission was made to that specific Dropbox folder. If I do evaluation and feedback, I can add a rubric to this specific assignment tool if I wanted. My annotation tool is for when marking, and if you want to enable anonymous marking, which isn't used commonly, and if you enable anonymous marking, it can't be undone. So we'll click Save and Close. So we can see that I create an assignment 2, and it has a badge, which means it's linked to a grade item. And it's due on September the 10th. So I thought we would look at quickly based on a TA role, what it looks like to mark an assignment. So if I go to view submissions, I don't have anybody that obviously submitted as of yet. So we'll just change our search options to show everybody. So from the list, normally it would show you that a file has been submitted under each name. I click on the link to evaluate. So here I'm presented with a mark I want to enter, and I can enter feedback. I can choose if I had to upload a file that I want to add for feedback. I could choose that here. Now, best practice when you're marking is to mark everybody like 1 by 1 and save as draft, so that everybody can publish their marks at the same time. So best practice really for TA situation is you grade everybody and then come back and publish at the end. So I'll just save as draft. I can come back to submissions. I'll show my search options again. You can see that the draft was saved. So once everybody has been evaluated, I can choose to highlight everybody, and then I would publish feedback. So then it would publish the grade for everybody at the same time. And the last tool we'll talk about, yeah.
While you're pausing, I'm just
Sure.
wondering, there's a question in the chat if you might be able to show a rubric at some point.
Mm-hmm. I think I should be able to find one. We can do that after quizzes. I can look for one. Don't know that I have one in this course. Let's see. This is just the arts and science one. But I think I have another one elsewhere. To see. Right, so I do in this course. So if we want to look at it from what it looks like on an assignment, maybe. I could add. This one has a rubric. So I could choose my score from here in a rubric, or I used to be able to open it up outside of the valuation. Like it used to show me, maybe something's changed in the last week. Because I used to be able to see the rubric as a whole view, not just in this one. But again, sorry about that. I'm not sure why it doesn't showing me what I want, the way I want to see it. But so this assessment has a rubric associated to it. So then I could mark the assessment based on the rubric criteria. And it should total the score. This one doesn't have a grade item specifically. And then you could save that assessment to save and close. Let me just see from this point of view, maybe they'll give it to me here. So here I can pop the rubric out and I can make my changes and my scores based on that. It's giving me totaling, I got an 80, close. It's giving me 80 out of 100, but because it has a grade item, it's associated as 8 of 10, and I can update because I already marked this one. Does that make sense? That was what we were hoping for.
Thanks, Karla.
Okay. So the last thing that we'll talk about for assessments are quizzes. So the quiz tool enables you to create and manage really point measured assessments. So you can use the quiz tool to perform ongoing assessments of learner understanding. And it also allows you to share feedback in a timely and effective manner. So the first thing we like to talk about in quizzes for best practice is to build your question library. So when you enter questions into the question library, it's sort of creating like a file folder style database. Sorry, that word was escaping me. So we build our questions in the question library. So we can click new. There are many different types of questions you can choose. There are a few that the system can mark automatically, such as true and false and multiple choice. So you would enter answers that were correct answer, and then the system can mark those automatically for you, such as like written response or some other types of questions that would have to be marked manually. So it just depends what type of questions you want to ask, but really we suggest you come to the question library and create your questions based on the type you want to add. So you enter your text, your answer, and you save. So I have my questions in my question library, then I need to build my quiz. So I can click done. I'm going to create a new quiz. So maybe we'll do quiz 3. There is no category. I'm going to add and edit my questions. I'm going to import from the question library. So I'm going to add my questions and click to add, and I'm going to go, these 2 questions are now in my quiz 3, go back to quiz 3 settings. So now that my questions have been added, I have a couple other options that are available to me. So do I only want to have a certain number of questions per page? I can enter maybe one question per page and click apply. And we're going to see a change here. So we see that a line has been added between these two questions. So this is a page break line. So it just indicates that I have one question per page. Do I want to prevent the student from moving backwards to the quiz? So when this feature is enabled, a box will come up when they click to go to the next page. It says, are you sure? Because you can't move back. I can choose to shuffle the questions at the quiz level. So questions would appear in a different order for each student. Do I want to add a description? So this is information that would appear as the quiz is being offered. That text appears on either the top or the bottom of each quiz page. And the description appears at the beginning when you take the quiz. So restrictions. So automatically when you create your quiz, it's hidden from users while you're setting it up. So you would have to come back and make it visible. And then we suggest that it has a start date, and then you can set a due date if you wish. Release conditions. So not maybe typical, but you could set this so that this quiz isn't visible until maybe you've completed a specific content module. You could add a password. So the password would have to be entered before the quiz is available. You could restrict it based on a specific IP address. And timing. So timing, we really recommend that you're using the enforced time limit if it is a timed quiz, right? So you would enter your time limit. If you have a time limit, you have to have at least a grace period of an integer of 1. So then you have to decide if it is enforced, what happens after that time if it has expired, what will happen? Do you want to allow the student to continue working? Or typically it's to prevent the student from making further changes. And that just means that if they try to make any further changes, the submit quiz button will be presented to them. And it will have saved any information up until that point. Special access is where you would grant any student with additional accommodations. So maybe a student gets an additional 10 minutes based on your time limit, and you could add that through the special access. And if you want to grade it, so the system, as I said, can grade upon completion if it was like true, false, and multiple choice. You could add a grade item. So then if it can grade automatically, to automatically move that item to the gradebook. And you can choose what the student views. So do you want to show them their score? You can show them that they got 2 out of 2, how many attempts they get for each specific quiz you're setting up. If you allow more than one quiz, what attempt of score do you want to take? The highest, lowest, or an average? And the last one we'll look at is submission views. So this is really what happens when I submit my quiz. What do I see? So by default view, immediately it's going to happen, and I'm not going to see any questions, and I'm not going to get any statistics. So you could change the default view. So by default, I'm going to see that the quiz was submitted successfully. As I said, we're not showing any question details, but maybe you wanted to. You could say yes, and I want to show you the questions you answered incorrectly. And you could choose to show them the answers to show them what's correct, and you could choose to show them the score they received on their quiz. So lots of details that to look at. If you don't want them to see their score when they submit the quiz, then you would remove to show the attempt score and overall attempt score. And then click save. So again, this is happening immediately when the quiz is submitted. If you want to release further details of the quiz after the fact, you would add an additional view. So you could say maybe after this date and time, I want to show you the questions and answers to your quiz. You could do so through an additional view, and then after everyone maybe has completed their attempt for those quizzes. Back to properties. So quiz 3, I have 2 quiz questions and 1 per page. I click save and close. You could click on the drop-down arrow. You see it's hidden. You could come here to make it visible to users when you're ready. If I want to preview what that looks like, I can do it from here as well. So it will show me any instructions. I can start my quiz. So it's just showing you what the students will see. So I click through. next. So this is what it looks like when you want to prevent them from moving backwards through the quiz. And then I submit. So yes. So again, you're about to submit your quiz. So this one, because I changed the view, is showing me immediately the results of my quiz. So then I can exit my preview. So again, a good option if you want to see what it looks like from the student point of view. So we don't have a lot of time really, but the last thing, I mean, the big one is really grades. So the grades tool is used to keep track of grades for the students. So you can evaluate specific tasks such as assignments, quizzes, maybe participation. So grade items in your book in the grade book can represent all work that you want to evaluate users on in the course. So you can create grade items and associate them with objects like assignments and quizzes. So really, it allows you to kind of set up based on the syllabus that you've outlined and how you're going to assess the students throughout the term, throughout the course for the term. So it's really a big tool and kind of one that can stand on its own. It can do lots of really fancy things, or it can be pretty straightforward too, but it's definitely something people can feel intimidated by, but we're here to help answer any of those questions, certainly along the way. So I think that really sums up what onQ has to offer. It can do, as I said, lots of fun and funky things if you need it to. And the Center for Teaching and Learning, we're here to help with those questions about design and setup, as well as if you have any other technical questions. We have a great resource in the onQ support site that we can share the link maybe in the chat or later with participants, but it gives you a lot of like questions, frequently asked questions, and takes you through how to set up and use each tool that we talked about today. Or I guess that maybe I talked about today.
Karla, we have just a few questions in the chat that I'm wondering if you can answer quickly.
Yeah.
The first one is, when creating a rubric, are you able to upload a rubric that you've made in a Word document, or do you use the rubric builder right in onQ?
You have to use the rubric tool in onQ.
Okay. And then the second question was if you would mind showing grading using the rubric again.
Oh, yes, sure. Sorry, I didn't do that very well. It was kind of like last minute. So I'm going to go back to my other course because I don't think I have a rubric in this one. So here, so this is the assignment that I have added a rubric to for assessment. So I can click it here and expands. This is like onQ just recently updated its view and marking in the assessment tool. So you can view the rubric and criteria in this view, but if you think to yourself, I really don't like this, I can't really see it very well. If you click the pop-out window link, then that's where it shows you the full rubric and all its criteria and such. So then I can choose from here what points I want to give. So then I click close. Then normally it would say save as draft or publish, but because I've already associated this one with a mark before, it's giving me the retract and update. So then once you've entered your score for your rubric, you would click typically the save as draft. I don't think that do I have one that hasn't been published. Let's see. Yeah, this one too has a rubric. You could see if you want to edit. But yeah, so this one was saved as a draft. Yeah, so then again, I could pop out the rubric window, enter the criteria I wish, close, and I can save as draft along the way. Back to submission. And then this one is a good point. It shows you that the submission was 11 hours late. It gives you that date time stamp to know when it was actually submitted. Did that help with the rubric marking? Hopefully.
That was great. Thank you, Karla.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to bring your attention to the link to the evaluation form that I put in the chat. Your feedback is really important. It helps us with future programming. So if you would take a couple of minutes to complete the evaluation form, it would be really appreciated. Karla, thank you for your time. I know how busy you are. You're awesome. And Carolyn, thank you so much for answering all those questions in the chat. And
Yes,
the
thank you.
recording should be up tomorrow. By tomorrow, and it will be on the TD website. Please go check out our website at queensu.ca CTL for other videos or resources and services that we have to offer. Thanks, everybody.